I was standing on the edge of unimaginable grief. My entire world had crumbled, and I honestly had nothing left. I tried everything I could to numb the pain, but the storm inside me just wouldn't stop. And in that moment of total desperation, with tears streaming down my face, I looked up and managed to get out the only words I had left: a desperate prayer for peace. What happened next? It changed everything. Before the storm, my life looked like one of those perfect photos you see online. If you scrolled through my social media back then, you'd see nothing but success and happiness. I had a career I'd poured my heart into, climbing the ladder with a drive that I confused with having a real purpose. My days were a blur of meetings and deadlines and goals, each one just another brick in this impressive life I thought I was building. I was respected, someone people looked to for answers, someone who seemed to have it all figured out. And in a lot of ways I did. I was married to the love of my life. Our relationship felt like something out of a movie, built on laughter, shared dreams, and just a deep, comfortable friendship. We had 2 beautiful kids, a boy and a girl, and their laughter filled our home with this chaotic joy that I loved more than any award or promotion. Our weekends were for soccer games, family barbecues, and trips to the park. We took yearly vacations, snapping pictures of smiling faces that would later feel like ghosts in my camera roll. We had the house in the right neighborhood, 2 cars in the driveway, the life we were all told to want. From the outside, it was perfect. It looked like proof that hard work and good choices paid off. My faith back then was part of that picture, but it was more of an accessory than a foundation. It was something I inherited, a set of traditions I'd grown up with, but never really questioned. We'd go to church on Christmas and Easter, and maybe a random Sunday when we felt like we needed a reset. I believed in God in a general, abstract way. He was this benevolent force, a cosmic safety net that I just assumed was there, but never really felt the need to actually test. My prayers were polite requests for things to keep going well, for health, for safety, the kinds of prayers a person says when they have everything and just want it to stay that way. Looking back, I can see how arrogant that was. My faith was built for calm seas. I'd never been through a real storm, so I had no idea my ship was basically made of paper. My security came from my own abilities, my planning, my control over everything. I managed our money, my career, our family's schedule, even my own emotions. With this intense efficiency, I believed deep down that if I just did everything right, nothing could ever go truly wrong. The peace I had was based on my circumstances. It was the kind of peace the world gives, a fragile, temporary calm that can be shattered in a single moment. I remember this one summer evening, just a few months before everything changed. We were all in the backyard. You could smell the freshly cut grass and the burgers on the grill. The kids were chasing fireflies, their shrieks of delight echoing as the sun went down, painting the sky orange and pink. My spouse came up and wrapped their arms around me from behind, resting their chin on my shoulder. We just stood there for a minute, watching our kids, our home, our life. "It's perfect, isn't it?" they whispered. And I remember nodding, just feeling so deeply content. "Yes," I said. "It's perfect." I held on to that moment, that feeling of perfect, man-made peace, like it was something I had earned, something I was entitled to. I had no idea I was standing on a cliff's edge. I had no idea the ground under my feet was about to give way, and that the perfect picture I'd so carefully built was about to be torn to shreds. I was living in a world I had created, completely unaware that I was never, ever in control. My trust was in my circumstances, not a creator. And I was about to learn the difference in the most brutal way you can imagine. The day it all fell apart started like any other Tuesday. It was ordinary, filled with the comfortable rhythms of a busy life. I was in a meeting staring at a PowerPoint about quarterly projections, half my mind on the grocery list and whether I needed to pick up the kids from soccer. My phone buzzed. I glanced down and saw the name of my kids' school. I felt a little flicker of annoyance. Probably a forgotten lunchbox. I silenced the call, planning to call back after the meeting. A minute later, it buzzed again. Same number. This time, a knot of unease tightened in my stomach. The principal doesn't call twice. I excused myself from the room, my colleagues' voices fading as I stepped into the hall. "Hello?" I said, my voice already a little shaky. The principal's voice was strained, trying so hard to be calm, but it wasn't working. There'd been an accident, a multi-car pile up on the highway during a school field trip. The bus was involved. My heart just stopped. My spouse was a chaperone on that trip. My youngest child was on that bus. The rest of the conversation is a blur, a jumble of words that made no sense. Critical condition, multiple casualties, still gathering information, university hospital. I don't remember the drive. I don't remember hanging up or telling my boss I was leaving. The next thing I knew, I was in the cold, sterile waiting room of the emergency department. The air was thick with the smell of antiseptic and fear. People were crying. Doctors and nurses moved with this grim, urgent purpose. Every time a door opened, my head would snap up, my body flooding with a sick mix of hope and dread. My older child was safe with my parents, but my entire world was inside that hospital. For hours, I just sat there, swinging from frantic prayers that were just, please, no please, no please, to a total hollow numbness. This couldn't be real. This was the kind of thing that happens to other people The kind of tragedy you see on the news before you change the channel. Finally, a doctor with exhaustion etched into every line on his face came and sat across from me. He looked at me with a kind of practiced sorrow, and I knew. Before he even said a word, I knew. He told me my child was gone, died on impact. The words were so clinical, but they hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air right out of my lungs. And my spouse was in surgery, severe internal injuries. They were doing everything they could. The world just tilted sideways. The perfect picture wasn't just torn, it was incinerated. The foundations of my life didn't just crack, they turned to dust. The Bible talks about the mountains being shaken. In that moment, my mountains crumbled into the sea. Everything I had built my identity on, being a parent, a partner, my sense of a predictable world was just gone. For the next few days, I lived in a nightmare. I moved through the motions in a fog of disbelief. I signed papers. I talked to police officers. I spent every waking second at the hospital, watching my spouse lie motionless, hooked up to a symphony of machines, each beep a cruel reminder of the life hanging by a thread. And then, 3 days later, the second mountain fell. Despite everything the surgeons tried, the damage was too much. My love, my partner, my best friend was gone. The grief that followed wasn't just an emotion, it was a physical thing. It was a crushing weight on my chest, a constant ringing in my ears, a thick, suffocating fog that filled my lungs and my mind. The home that used to be filled with laughter was now a silent cave. Every corner held a memory. Every object was torture. A half-finished drawing on the table, a pair of shoes by the front door, a jacket on a chair. They were all monuments to a life that had been stolen from me. The silence was deafening, a constant scream that no one else could hear. The weeks after the funerals were a descent into a darkness I never knew could exist. The initial shock, which had been a weird kind of anesthetic, started to wear off, leaving behind raw, exposed nerves. The well-meaning visitors eventually stopped coming by. The casseroles stopped appearing on my doorstep. The phone calls slowed down, and I was left alone in the echoing silence of my shattered life, with only my remaining child, whose own grief was a constant, heartbreaking mirror of my own. My life, once so perfectly managed, became about pure survival. Just getting out of bed felt like an impossible task. Simple decisions like what to make for breakfast felt overwhelming. I went through the motions for my child, making meals I couldn't eat, helping with homework I couldn't understand, offering empty words of comfort when I was drowning myself. But inside, I was vacant, hollowed out, a ghost haunting the ruins of my own life. I tried to go back to work, thinking the routine might save me, but the person who thrived on deadlines was gone. I'd sit in my office, staring at my computer for hours, the words and numbers blurring together. The concerns of the corporate world felt so absurd and meaningless. My colleagues were kind, but they treated me with this gentle, fearful pity. They had no idea what to say, and I didn't have the energy to pretend I was okay. I took an indefinite leave of absence. My anger was a living thing, a hot, molten rage that churned in my gut. I was furious at the drunk driver who caused it all. I was furious at the world for just continuing to spin. I was furious at every happy couple I saw, at every family in the park. But most of all, I was furious with God. Where was He? Where was this benevolent, protective God I had nodded to on Sunday mornings? The God who was supposed to be a refuge and a fortress. It felt like the cruelest joke in the universe. I lived a good life. I checked all the boxes. For what? To have everything I loved violently ripped away. The nice little sayings I'd heard my whole life. He has a plan. It works all things for good. Felt like a slap in the face. What possible good could come from this? What kind of plan involves the death of my child and my spouse? My faith, that fragile little ornament, shattered into a million pieces. Bible verses people sent me felt like stones they were throwing at me. I started to actively hate God. I'd scream at Him in my empty house until my voice was raw. I dared Him to show Himself, to give me an explanation. The only answer was silence. A cold, indifferent, cosmic silence that just confirmed my deepest fear. I was completely and utterly alone. The Bible says the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, but He felt 1,000,000 miles away. The nights were the worst. Sleep rarely came. I'd lie awake, staring into the dark, replaying the accident, imagining the terror and the pain. The grief was a physical presence in the room, a monster sitting on my chest, whispering lies. I tried everything to escape it. I drank until I passed out. But the grief was always there when I woke up. I'd drive for hours with no destination, just to escape the thoughts roaring in my head. I thought about ending it all. The only thing that kept me here was the face of my surviving child. It was a responsibility I couldn't abandon. This went on for months. A slow, agonizing grind of days bleeding into one another. The darkness wasn't just around me, it was inside me. It had eaten me alive. I finally reached a point of absolute, rock-bottom despair. I had exhausted every human option. The anger was gone, leaving behind only a bone, deep weariness. I was at the end of myself. One night, it all came to a head. It was the anniversary of the day we brought our youngest home from the hospital. The memory ambushed me, and the pain was as sharp as day one. I found myself on the floor of my closet, clutching a tiny pair of shoes, just sobbing. Not quiet tears, but these gut-wrenching, animal-like sobs that tore through my body. I had nothing left. No strength, no hope, no answers. I had yelled at God. I had cursed God. I had denied God. And in that final moment of utter desperation, there was only one thing left to do. It wasn't a prayer of faith. It was the last cry of a dying soul. I looked up, my face a mess of tears, and the words just fell out, barely a whisper. God, if you're real, if you're there, I can't do this anymore. I can't. Please just help me. I don't want to feel this way anymore. I just want peace. Please give me peace. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't rehearsed. It was the most honest, raw, and desperate sentence of my life. I had hit rock bottom. I had prayed in my darkest moment. In the silence that followed my plea, I expected nothing. I had thrown my last broken words into what I thought was an empty void. I just lay there on the floor, curled up, exhausted, waiting for that familiar wave of anguish to pull me back under. But it didn't come. Instead, something else happened. It wasn't a flash of light, a booming voice. It started as a feeling, a subtle shift inside me, in my very soul. It began as this profound stillness, a quiet that was completely foreign to the chaos that had been raging inside me for months. The storm in my mind, that endless loop of pain and anger, didn't just quiet down, it stopped. For the first time since that horrible day, there was silence in my head. Then came a warmth. It started in my chest and spread through my body, chasing away the cold that had settled deep in my bones. It felt like stepping out of a blizzard and into a warm room. It was a physical sensation as real as the floor under me and the tears on my face. And with that warmth came peace, but not the kind of peace I had known before, that fragile peace that depended on everything going right. This was something else entirely. The Bible calls it the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, and that's exactly what it was. It made no sense. My circumstances hadn't changed. My loved ones were still gone. My grief was still real. My world was still in ruins. By every earthly measure, I should have been a complete wreck. Yet in that moment, I felt a calm so deep, so absolute, it defied all logic. It was a peace that had nothing to do with my external world. It was something being given to me, poured into the hollow out spaces inside me. Jesus said, "My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives." For the first time, I understood what he meant. The world's peace is the absence of trouble. This peace was the presence of God in the middle of it. The immense, crushing weight on my chest began to lift. I could breathe deeply for the first time in months. The knot of grief and anger in my throat just dissolved. The sob stopped, replaced by a quiet awe. I wasn't happy. I wasn't fixed. The pain of my loss was still there, but its nature had fundamentally changed. Before, the grief was a monster that had consumed me, an ocean I was drowning in. Now, it felt like I was being held securely in that ocean. The waves of sorrow could still hit me, but they no longer had the power to pull me under. I was being held by something or someone infinitely stronger than the storm. In that holy, silent moment on my closet floor, I felt so completely seen, known, and loved, not an idea of love, but a real feeling. A love that wasn't based on me being good enough. A love that met me at my absolute worst. Broken, hateful, and despairing, and didn't turn away. I had spent months screaming at God, and his response wasn't anger or punishment. It was a flood of peace that I couldn't explain. It was mercy. The prophet Isaiah wrote, "Though the mountains be shaken and the hills be removed, yet my unfailing love for you will not be shaken, nor my covenant of peace be removed, says the Lord, who has compassion on you. I had felt my mountains shake. I had seen my hills removed. And yet there on the floor, I felt the truth of that promise, an unshakable love, a covenant of peace. I don't know how long I lay there. Time just sort of stopped. I wasn't thinking about the past or worrying about the future. I was just there in that moment, wrapped in a peace I never knew was possible. It was a direct, undeniable answer to the most desperate prayer of my life. I had asked for peace, and it was given to me in a way I couldn't have even imagined. It was a supernatural gift, and it wasn't just a fleeting feeling. It was a turning point. It was the first day of a new life. Waking up the next morning was different. That familiar dread that usually hit me the second I opened my eyes was gone. In its place was the quiet echo of the peace from the night before. It was still there, a gentle hum under the surface. The world didn't magically turn back to color, and the grief hadn't vanished. The empty spaces in my home and my heart were still painfully real. But something deep inside me had shifted. The suffocating darkness had been pierced by a sliver, that one experienced sliver of light. Experience didn't erase my pain, but it reframed it. It gave me a new foundation to stand on. Before, my grief was the whole story. It was a chapter in a bigger story, one that now included a real encounter with a loving, present God. The question was no longer, where is God? It was, how do I live now that I know He found me? The journey after was slow. It was a process of learning to walk again, one stumbling step at a time. I started reading the Bible not as a collection of old stories, but as a lifeline. The words that once felt like stones now felt like bread. Verses that used to be meaningless, sayings now shone with a personal, profound truth. When I read, "The Lord is near to the brokenhearted and saves the crushed in spirit," it wasn't just a nice thought anymore. I knew what it felt like to be crushed in spirit, and I knew what it felt like for Him to draw near. When I read Jesus' words, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world," I felt the deep truth of it. He wasn't promising a life without trouble. He was promising His presence and His victory inside of it. My prayers were transformed. They weren't a polite list of requests anymore. They became a real conversation, raw, honest, and ongoing. Some days my prayers were filled with gratitude for that peace. Other days, they were filled with tears and questions as I wrestled with grief. But I wasn't shouting into a void anymore. I was talking to the God who met me on my closet floor, and I was confident that He was listening. I found my way back to church, but this time was different. I wasn't there to keep up an image. I was there because I needed people, and because I now had a story to share. I found that being vulnerable about my pain actually allowed other people to be vulnerable too. In sharing our brokenness, we found a shared strength. God uses our pain to help others. He comforts us so we can offer that same comfort to them. My grief hasn't disappeared, but it is being redeemed. There are still days when the loss feels heavy, when a memory brings a fresh wave of tears. But the grief no longer has the final word. It doesn't lead to despair anymore, but to a deeper reliance on God. It has carved out a space in my heart for a new kind of compassion for others who are hurting. The pain has become part of my purpose. My life today looks nothing like that perfect picture from before. The broken pieces weren't magically put back together. Instead, God is building something new from the rubble. A life built not on my own strength, but on the rock of His faithfulness. A life where peace isn't found in the absence of storms, but in the presence of the one who can calm the storm inside my own heart. My trust is no longer in my circumstances. It's in the God who keeps His promises. As it's written, you will keep in perfect peace those whose minds are steadfast because they trust in you. I'm learning day by day what it means to keep my mind on Him. My story is deeply personal, but I know the feelings of loss, despair, and being alone are universal. Maybe you're in your own darkest moment right now. Maybe you're screaming into a void, wondering if anyone hears you. I want you to know that you are not alone, and there is hope. If this story resonated with you, I would be so honored if you would share your own experience in the comments. There's so much power and healing when we share our stories and realize we're not alone. And if you know someone who is walking through a hard season, someone who needs to hear a message of hope, please consider sharing this with them. And finally, if you're in that dark place right now, let me say a prayer for you. Father God, I lift up every single person listening who is hurting. For the one whose heart is broken, whose spirit is crushed, who feels lost in the darkness, Lord, you see them. You know their pain. I pray that you would meet them right where they are, just as you met me. Break through their darkness with your light. Quiet the storm in their soul with your presence. I pray you would pour out your peace that surpasses all understanding, a peace that guards their hearts and their minds. Remind them that even when the mountains are shaking, your love for them is unshakable. Give them the strength for one more minute, one more hour, one more day, and let them feel in a real and tangible way that you are near. In my journey has taught me the most important lesson of my life. True peace is not the absence of problems, but the presence of God within them. For so long, I thought a blessed life was a life without suffering. Now I know a blessed life is one where you experience God's faithfulness in the middle of suffering. The answer to my prayer wasn't the removal of my pain, but the arrival of a peace that could hold it. God didn't give me the life I thought I wanted. He gave me Himself, which is what I truly needed. If you are in the storm, don't lose hope. The God of the universe is not distant. He is near. He is compassionate. And He is waiting to respond to the desperate cries of your heart. Jesus says, "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." That peace is real. It is available, and it can change everything.